Hello and welcome to this edition of Crossover. I'm Chi Xiaoqing with David and Lily.
Hello.
Now, the President of the People's Republic of China, Hu Jintao, is visiting the United States. And this time it's supposed to be a state visit.
Yeah.
That is the highest level of a visit paid by the head of a state.
Yes.
Well, that seems to be very important in the bilateral relations in the two countries.
Yes, it is.
Two countries.
Well, that is one of the most important bilateral relations in the world. We all know about it.
If I do say so myself, the U.S.-China relationship is very, very important. That's true. That's right.
Yeah.
And just as Beijing was very hospitable to foreign guests during the Olympics, we intend to be very hospitable.
I thought you were talking about yourself.
No. I don't have the money to put out.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I mean, today we've invited both of you for a special reason, because David, you've been living in Beijing for 20-something years?
20-something years.
Oh,
I hate to admit, I know I don't look it.
Yeah.
I know.
I only look about 25.
Yeah, you came here when you were young, you know.
Yeah, right, when I was 5.
Right, real young. And Lily, you lived and studied in the States for 1 year when you were in your high school.
Yeah, I didn't stay in the States for that long, but the first time I visited her was, I don't know, 14, 15 years ago. And then I paid a visit to my host family last year. So it was like this 14 years gap in between.
Oh, yeah.
So I did see the difference, how they think of the Chinese people, how they treat a Chinese guest, and how they know about, what's their knowledge about the world.
Oh, I'm sure they know much more about your country now than they did then.
Yes, we are going to come to that.
And that was a exchange program.
Yeah, that was a 1-year exchange program, because back in 1995, foreign exchange students was not that popular in China, even in big cities like Shanghai, where I was living in. So we were really the first batch of students, sort of the experimental batch. So they only picked 3 students out of the whole city of Shanghai to do this, and apart from your English skills, they wanted to choose someone with a good personality. Mainly, you are willingly to talk to people, to communicate to people, and you, of course, they have other criteria. You cannot be too picky on food, and you know,
well, there are Chinese restaurants anywhere.
Oh, but they're not the same.
Okay.
And anyway, I was very lucky, because they think I was, at that time, I was a bit more open-minded. I was a bit different from my fellow girlfriends or female schoolmates, because I was a bit like a boy. I had this boyish personality of talking, and I remember during
America wanted boys.
Yeah, but I remember when I was asked a question about during my final round of interview. They were picking, I don't know, 3 out of 10 or something. And then the judge asked me, "Did you get a good sleep last night?" You know, I knew he was referring to whether I was nervous to get any sleep that night. But I said, no, I didn't, because I was worried about who's going to win the final NBA of that season, whether it's Houston.
Not about this person, not about this interview.
Because I loved watching NBA at that time.
But where did you go? I mean, what is the place?
Oh, that's the interesting part, because at that time, they didn't want to put the Chinese students in big cities, New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, because even that organization, they don't think those big cities would represent the root culture of the United States.
Yeah,
they believe,
that's
right?
true to some extent.
True, right?
That's right.
Right. So basically, we were putting smaller cities or even in the heartland. And for me, they asked me, "Have you read any American literatures?" And I was only in high school at that time, and I thought hard, and I said, "Yes, I've read Mark Twain."
Mark Twain?
Yeah, the Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, right? And of Tom Sawyer.
Yes.
And then they said, "Great! We have this town that is along the Mississippi River. Actually, it's very close to the hometown of Mark Twain.
Wow.
And then we can send you there." So in the end, I was transported from Shanghai. At that time, Shanghai had like 10 million people or something population in the city, to a town of 2,500 people. In the States. That's a culture shock.
Yeah, culture shock.
Big shock.
Yeah. That's so very interesting. That's
very quite an experience.
Yeah.
I mean, all these high-profile exchange of visits, that's between the governments, and that's obviously very, very good. We might think that it's, you know, so far, far away from the lives of average people, from ordinary people in the two countries, but actually it's affecting. It's also helping the understanding between the two peoples, actually, the two countries. And so basically what we are going to talk about is exchange of, you know, people's contacts. Mm-hmm. So when did you first come to China?
1987.
To a little town
before
of
you were even born, probably.
to a little town of 200 people? Maybe?
No, to the big city of Beijing.
All right. You came to teach or
but
study?
Still,
Yes.
It was a culture shock, right?
It was a culture shock, yeah.
What was the question you got a lot when you first came
of
here?
Chinese, from Chinese people.
Yeah.
Well, back then they were very interested in just everyday things. They would say, "How much money do you make?"
Oh.
Which for an American is a shock, because no one ever asks you how much money you make. They say, "Oh, you're a professor. How much money do you make?" I thought, what are you asking me that for?
None of your business.
But they would also ask me about the NBA. They would ask all kinds of questions. What's interesting to me is that at that time they would ask, you know, how much does a car cost? How much does a meal cost? How much money do you make? They would ask things like, when you go home to your parents' house, do they make you pay rent? Oh. They did ask me. Many people said, we've heard that when when your children grow up and they go back to stay with their parents, the parents charge them rent. Oh. They heard this kind of stuff, you know. So they didn't really understand the U.S. very much. In the 90s when I was here, even the late 90s, and even now, the average cab driver knows more about America than I do. I mean, they'll ask me something about, you know, how much does a Mercedes cost in the U.S.? And I said, I don't know, $30,000? I said, no, you don't know what you're talking about. They'll tell me about the NBA. They know more about it than I do. So that's the difference.
Thanks to the technology.
Whereas, so I think what happened is maybe Americans and Chinese both didn't know much about each other's culture back in the 80s after the 改革开放, the reform and opening up.
Yes.
But now I think what's happened is the Chinese have learned a lot more about America, so much that they know everything about it. I think Americans still don't really know as much about China as they should.
Is it because they don't have this urge to learn? They're not eager to learn about a foreign
There should be
country?
opening policy in the States.
There should be, yeah. But I mean, if you think about it, if you look at China, they're very interested in the outside world.
Right, we are.
A lot of
curious.
the movies you watch, the TV, and everything is all about the West.
Yeah.
In America, they're very closed off in many ways. They're so fixated on America that they don't really see overseas very much. It's a problem with our culture.
Yeah, that's strange, because I've always thought that the Americans like to make friends, and they're always so, you know, sort of they're so open-minded most of the time. But on the other hand, as you were talking about, I did notice that they are not that interested in other countries. I don't know why. Is it probably because that in the past, I don't know, many decades, that they have had a life that is content enough for them, so therefore they feel content to learn about things happening just around them? Yeah,
I think that it's a complicated question, but there's a sense of cultural superiority, that we're the most important culture on earth. But also, like I said, you know, the media, everything is sort of fixated on the American audience. The Americans tend to think, I don't need to understand about the rest of the world. We have the most important thing here. I mean, we have Lady Gaga, you know, and so they sort of, but you know, it's a problem. I don't want to bash America too much. I'm sorry. There might be some Americans watching this. America's a nice place, really it is. I really like Americans.
America is a nice place. Thinking of the Chinese word for America.
Oh, yes.
美国.
It's a beautiful country.
Yeah, 美 means beautiful, but the Americans call China.
Just a plate, right?
Yeah, which is China plate.
This is not fair, but I mean, it's just natural for a country to focus just on what's happening around you in your country, and basically that's where your interest is. But at the same time, it's just natural for Chinese people, because we always want to know more about what's happening in other places, maybe just out of curiosity, and maybe because this is still a developing place, and maybe you want to be more connected with the outside world, I guess, for different reasons.
I think Americans and Chinese have a natural kind of affinity for each other. I've always found that no matter what Chinese-American relationships are like, Chinese people always like American people, and American people like Chinese people.
But where do we get that information? Where do we get the stereotyped image sometimes? Where do we get those information? That's a key question.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll take a short break. We're talking about people-to-people contact. between China and the United States. You're watching Crossover. And welcome back to Crossover. So people-to-people contact. We somehow have a image of each other. Basically, I guess for most of Chinese, from my own experience, because I've been only to the States, I've been to only one place, New York, for 4 nights. So I can't say I get the information from my visits. Basically, I just got it from movies, maybe,
movies,
from the internet.
Basically movies, especially in the old days when internet was not that popular in the last century, that was.
From legends, because lots of stories circling around.
I remember when my wife, who's Chinese, first went to the U.S., I played a little joke on her. I said, the night before we were getting ready to go, I said, in all seriousness, I'm a good actor, and I put on this serious, I said, oh yeah, there's something we need to do when you get to the U.S. We need to buy your gun, because all Americans we carry guns.
Use guns.
Right? Yeah, and I said,
so
we need to get you a woman's gun, of course. I think my mother has one we can loan to you until we buy you a gun.
Did you want to scare away your wife at the time?
I was watching her expression, and she was thinking, oh yeah, Americans carry. She's seen the movies where everyone pulls out a gun.
The cowboys.
Yes, and so she really believed it, and I just couldn't keep it. I had to just laugh. I said, no, I'm kidding. Americans don't always carry guns, but she believed it.
That's
so
true.
She had the stereotype.
Right.
I mean, stereotype image. What about you? What happened to you when you first went to your host family in Missouri, right?
Yeah, because it was quite funny, because before I went there, my mother was so worried, sending a teenage girl to the States all by herself. So she told me there are 3 rules, 3 don'ts that you can never do in the States. First of all, don't do drugs.
No drugs.
No drugs.
And then no sexual relationship with a boyfriend. And the third one was...
Carry your gun. No.
That's your wife.
Actually, she mentioned something about that, like don't get in a fight or something like that, because she was aware that many Americans do carry a gun. So when I went there, it was a culture shock already when I see a small town where the people live, a very quiet life. Everyone knows everyone in this town.
It's not like New York anymore.
Much safer than Shanghai, where you came from.
Right, I was about to say. And also my host family. My host father was the minister of the Church of Christ. So they raised me for that year even stricter than my biological parents. They're like, you can do this, you can do that. And if I came home a bit late, hang out with my friends, and they would actually call, they would get worried.
So it's 3 no's from your mother, 30 no's from your husband.
Yeah, and then my mom was so relieved to hear that.
Right, and what kind of questions did you get from friends around?
Yeah, a lot. At that time, back in the mid-1990s, the American people in small towns, not in big cities, they got their impressions about China from Disneyland, where you have you have different theme sections in Disneyland, and there was this part that's about China. So all the stuff there, the Chinese stuff in that part, the men wear long hair, pigtails, long pigtails, and they wear those little round hats and caps all the time.
From the Qing Dynasty.
Yeah, it's more like from the Qing Dynasty, and they dress in like long dresses, long gowns, dresses. So that's what they asked me: do men in China still wear long hair? A lot. And then they asked me, do you all know Kung Fu?
Yes.
I'm sure you know. I'm sure you know.
Yes, you must say yes. You must say yes to protect yourself.
And then there were questions about, some of them actually, they knew something about China, about like you have different animals to represent every year. So they would come to me, I'm born in the year this, and tell me what animal is me. That's quite interesting.
We have new icons when you think of each other's countries, and then you come across with some icons, names.
Yes.
America, if we ask Chinese about America, it's
Elvis
NBA.
Presley, I'm thinking Michael Jackson. And now we watch American
Hollywood,
Idol, so
it's everything, it's a lot.
Yeah.
And if you ask an American about Chinese, maybe it's...
Well, now they know Yao Ming.
Yao Ming.
Some people know like Gong Li or Zhang Ziyi, these big stars. Like, certainly Jackie Chan. They don't really make a separation between Hong Kong and the mainland.
Right.
It can be Jackie Chan, be Bruce Lee. They don't know. But also Mao Zedong,
Chairman
Oh,
Mao.
they know
Chairman Mao still represents, that's still one of the iconic figures of China. Even though it's from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, he still is what you think of when you think of China. It's Chairman Mao. Chairman Mao.
Right, so Chairman Mao's China. Or
Well, I mean, it's like America, Washington. Even though, you know, still Washington is like this icon of America, and Lincoln. So, I mean, it's the same thing. You think of America, you think of Lincoln. You think of China, you think of Mao Zedong.
Yeah, still, I mean, when you think of London, say, oh, the city of fog.
Yeah.
And Shakespeare.
Shakespeare.
Right.
So it's quite like the U.S. President Nixon must have a special place in the Chinese people's hearts.
Yeah.
Because that's how he started to forge this new bilateral diplomatic relations.
That's right. Yeah.
Things.
When did you first hear of this country, China?
You know, I don't remember. I mean, everyone knows about China, just like
China
you.
is
Like,
China, yeah.
I think the first time I even sort of became aware of it was there was a TV show that was actually called Kung Fu. But the actor was not Chinese; he was American, playing a Chinese person.
Chinese American, no?
No, it was just an American.
Western
they just
American.
dressed him up,
really?
made his makeup look like Chinese.
That's hard to do.
It was hard to do. And there was also something called Charlie Chan movies. And those were also played...
Not so positive.
Those are also played not by Chinese people. They were played by Westerners.
Charlie Chan.
Charlie Chan, right. So those are the images that we saw, you know, and the Chinese was always very polite and everything, but they always talk like this. The Chinese talk like this, you know.
In Cantonese.
Or with this accent.
Yeah.
And they spoke in very, you know, Confucius they're quoting Confucius all the time. And their logic was very inscrutable, you know, like you never knew quite where they had got their logic and what they were thinking about. So these stereotyped images were in my culture.
And basically they're, you know, trying to fulfill, they're trying to actually to cater to the expectations of the audience, because everyone is expecting to see the image of Chinese figures or characters on TV like that.
Right.
We produce something like that.
That's right. So it was sort of for entertainment purposes. Bruce Lee was on a TV show too, playing Oriental Kung Fu. You know. So these are images that, you know, stereotypes. As I grew older, I began to meet some Chinese people, and then the stereotypes just go away because they don't fit into what you realize, you know. And then I have to say, what got me into Chinese and Chinese culture was the characters, the Chinese characters. I thought they were so beautiful, and I still think that the characters are so beautiful, and I wanted to learn about that. But it's a trap, because once you start learning about the characters, then you say, oh, well, in Chinese culture, this means this, and you suddenly find yourself learning about the culture.
You want to know more.
And you want to know more, you know. And then the more you learn, you find out there are a lot of beautiful women in China.
That's why I decided to come to China. And no, again, I mean, TV is playing a very
plays a big role.
Like in the 80s or 90s, there are quite a few famous TV shows, TV series
like
from
the one,
the States. Think about it. Let's take a break first. Okay, you're watching Crossover. And welcome back to Crossover. We're talking about the people-to-people contact and people-to-people relationships between the two countries, China and the beautiful country, the United States, 美国. So what are the movie or TV series?
I cannot recall the first American movie that I've ever saw. I mean, they just American this idea as a country far away, as people that are white and have blue eyes. You know, that image just sort of accompanied us as we grew up. But I remember there was this one American TV drama, or I think it was a sitcom or something, called Growing Pains. That was so popular in China, or at least in Shanghai during the 1990s.
DiCaprio?
No.
DiCaprio only played a very small role, a supporting role.
Right.
We actually learned about the way ordinary American families live. Because in the past we thought American is so advanced, they're so high tech. Maybe every house has, I don't know, I was thinking maybe they have lots of money, or, you know, they have things that we cannot imagine, like a robot serving, you know, food, everything. But then watching that thing, we know, okay, they have a big house. Most of them, you can live in a house. We were a little bit jealous of that, you know, because in China, in the cities, you know, it's very
small
hard.
Apartment,
Even in the 80s, I mean,
and you all have a big fridge, you know, that has double door fridge, and
That's why we're so fat. We have a big
and
fridge.
also a huge garbage can, that you could dump your food and everything.
Right.
And I learned from that TV drama is that how you deal with relations. It's like the parents and the children, they're more like friends. They can address each other with their first names. Sometimes they don't have to call them mom and dad all the time. They can call their names. And I was shocked when in one of the shows, the girl was in love with one of her classmates, and the mom actually asked her, does he have a nice ass? And I was so shocked because they actually translate that into Chinese, 他的臀部翘吗？他的臀部很翘吗？ Things like that. And I was like, wow, that's a mom talking about that. Because imagine if I did something, my mom would
Not
be
always.
Not always. My mom would not have asked me.
No?
Not always. So,
that's TV, but I mean,
so
maybe
that's TV again.
Yeah. I mean, that's a little. I mean, it's possible.
What I could remember from those years in the 90s was I don't quite remember the original name, the exact translation, because what I saw at the time was in Chinese. But basically, it's a story about Detective Hunter.
Oh yes.
Hunter.
That was one of the big. Yes, that was one of the big original popular sitcoms.
In the 90s, right?
Well, it was in the 80s.
80s.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, it was the first. Really, I remember that very clearly. Hunter. Everyone.
You saw that in China.
I saw it in China. Yeah.
Right.
Not in America. I never saw it in the US. I saw it in China.
And another one. Maybe Uncle Martin from the Mars?
Oh, you're bringing back all these memories. It was My Favorite Martian, which was an old black and white American sitcom. Oh, this is amazing to me. That was very popular when I was a kid. And then when I saw it in China, translated into Chinese, I couldn't believe how strange. It was about an uncle who was a Martian, and he had antenna that came out.
Yeah, that's in the 80s.
That was in the 80s.
Yeah.
And I remember Chinese people loved this. They thought it was absolutely hilarious.
Yes.
And what was weird about it was, how American situation comedies have what's called a laugh track. So after every joke, there's laughter. Well, in the Chinese version, they took that away because they had to dub it into Chinese. So they would tell the joke when there was no laughter. And so it was strange for me to watch it because
you were expecting something.
Where's the laughter? Maybe it's not funny in Chinese. I mean, it was very, very weird to watch that. But yes, that was from back then. Yeah.
But actually, you could see the influence of these imported TV series to, say, the movie industry and also the TV industry in China. Because in those years, you could see scenes in Chinese-made movies. The police cars driven in the way. Just like the way that you could see in that movie, Detective Hunter.
Right.
You put something exactly. But that was not something you would see on the street because the official police cars wouldn't act like that way.
Right.
But you could see the influence of these movies and TV series to the Chinese movie industry.
We grew up knowing about the Disney's and the Disneyland, so we know
Tom and Jerry.
Tom and Jerry.
Tom and Jerry is not Walt Disney.
Tom and Jerry was later than that, but we learned about Mickey Mouse, Donald the Duck, and then we learned that there is a place called Disneyland in this world.
That's right.
And it's in the United States. So, by the time I went to the States, the first place I want to go, they would hand us forms listing the places you want to visit most, and almost all of us listed Disneyland.
I'm American. I've never been to Disneyland.
No?
Never been to Disneyland.
Oh.
I remember when I was there at Peking University in the late 80s, and the graduate students, China's smartest people, the generation of the PhDs and everything, there was a TV room where you could go watch TV, and they would all eat their dinner, and then they rushed to the TV room to watch what? Disney, Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
And all these, PhDs were there watching Mickey Mouse. And I'd say, why is this interesting to you? They'd say, shh, this is a different way of looking at the world. There's a philosophy here.
Yes.
There's a way of looking at life. And I never noticed that, but it's true.
It's
a different way of thinking of life.
A different way of entertainment.
Yeah.
Different way of